My name is Tom. I'm 29 years old, and I've been working as a private driver for Brian Harrington for the past 2 years. It's a good job, better than good, actually. The pay is excellent, the hours are relatively predictable, and Brian treats me with the kind of respect that's rare in this line of work. I've driven for wealthy clients before who viewed me as nothing more than an extension of the steering wheel. Brian has never been like that. He learns the names of my nieces and nephews, remembers to ask about my mother when she's ill, and always insists I take his leftover dinner when we've been out late and he knows I haven't had time to eat. Which is probably why I've developed feelings for him, feelings that go far beyond the professional boundaries of our relationship. Feelings I've become quite skilled at concealing behind a carefully maintained mask of friendly professionalism. Brian is 36, the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity company he started in his garage 8 years ago. Since then, he's built it into a respected mid-sized firm with clients ranging from local businesses to government agencies. He's brilliant, driven, and works harder than anyone I've ever known. He's also thoughtful and genuinely humble despite his success. He has a dry sense of humor that catches people off guard because he looks so serious most of the time. And yes, he's attractive. In that effortlessly masculine way, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that's perpetually a week past needing a trim, blue eyes that shift from navy to cobalt depending on what he's wearing, and the kind of smile that transforms his whole face, on the rare occasion something breaks through his professional reserve. Not that I've been paying particularly close attention. Our routine is well established. I pick him up from his downtown apartment every morning at 7:30, drive him to his office or to meetings across the city, wait if needed or return later to collect him, and generally remain on call until he's safely home in the evening. Some days are long. Others are mercifully short when he decides to work from home or finishes early to go for a run, one of the few activities I know he does purely for himself. The arrangement works smoothly. Our interaction is comfortable within clearly defined parameters. I know exactly where I stand with Brian, as his trusted driver. Perhaps even something approaching a friend. But never anything more. He's never given any indication that he might be interested in men, with occasional mentions of ex-girlfriends and polite responses to the flirtations of women we encounter in his professional life. So I've made peace with the situation. I'm content with a job I enjoy and an employer I respect, even if, in unguarded moments, I allow myself to imagine a different kind of relationship between us. Until the night everything changed. It began as a typical Wednesday. I'd driven Brian to his office in the morning, then to a lunch meeting at an upscale restaurant downtown, then back to his office. Around 5, he texted to say he had a dinner meeting with a potential client, asking me to pick him up at 8 from Archer's, an exclusive steakhouse known for its private dining rooms and extensive wine cellar. I arrived 10 minutes early, as usual, parked in the designated area for drivers, and sent Brian a quick message letting him know I was there whenever he was ready. This was our standard procedure, so he could finish his business without feeling rushed. At 8:05, my phone buzzed with a text. Meeting running long. Important client. Probably another hour. Not unusual. Business dinners often ran late, especially when things were going well. I settled in for the wait, turned on a podcast, and made myself as comfortable as possible in the driver's seat of the black Mercedes S-Class that Brian insisted on providing for my use. 1 hour stretched into 2, then nearly 3. I received occasional updates from Brian, each one apologizing for the delay but explaining that the potential contract was significant and the client was finally warming up after several glasses of wine. I assured him it was fine, though I was beginning to wonder what kind of business discussion could still be productive after 3 hours of dinner and drinks. Around 11, the restaurant's valet approached my window. "Are you waiting for Mr. Harrington?" he asked, his expression concerned. "Yes," I replied immediately, alert. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly," he said diplomatically. "But he and Mr. Donovan have been enjoying themselves quite extensively. The manager asked me to check if his driver was still available." I understood the subtext immediately. Brian was drunk. Something I'd rarely seen in our 2 years together. He occasionally had a glass of wine with dinner or a scotch at a work event, but he prided himself on his self-control and sharpness when making business decisions. "I'll come in," I told the valet, turning off the podcast and pocketing my phone. Inside, Archer's was all dark wood, leather, and subdued lighting, designed to make wealthy patrons feel cocooned in luxury. The maitre d' recognized me immediately, having seen me wait inside before during bad weather, and led me toward the back of the restaurant, to a private dining room with frosted glass doors. Through the translucent glass, I could make out two figures seated at a table covered in empty wine bottles and the remains of what must have been an elaborate meal. The maitre d' knocked discreetly before opening the door. What I walked into was a scene of comfortable inebriation. Will was telling me about his latest college research. He was thinking about applying to MIT. "You should apply too," he said, gesturing with a slice of pizza. "Your grades are even better than mine in physics and math. We could be roommates." The thought of sharing a dorm room with Will made my stomach flip. "Maybe," I said, non-committally. "I'm still looking at options." The truth was, I'd already decided to apply to colleges on the West Coast. Part of me thought that maybe some distance would help me get over these feelings. The idea of being away from Will hurt, but the fear of ruining our friendship hurt more. "Hey!" Will's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Where'd you go just now?" I looked up to find him watching me with that intensity that always made me feel like he could see right through me. A piece of sauce was stuck to the corner of his mouth, and without thinking, I reached across the table to wipe it away with my thumb. The moment I realized what I'd done, I froze. Will's eyes widened slightly, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then he smiled, breaking the tension. "Thanks, Mom," he teased. But there was something in his voice I couldn't quite read. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying the moment over and over, the way his lips had felt under my thumb, the look in his eyes, that slight catch in his voice. Was I imagining things? Seeing what I wanted to see? As winter turned to spring of our senior year, things between Will and me became increasingly complicated. There were moments when I could swear he was flirting with me. But then he'd mention going to prom with Sarah Matthews from our chemistry class, and I'd convince myself I was reading too much into things. One Friday night in April changed everything. We were at a party at Jake Thompson's house, one of those typical high school parties where someone's parents were out of town. Will had been drinking more than usual, his cheeks flushed and his laugh a little louder than normal. "Dance with me, Alex," he called out, grabbing my arm as some pop song played through the speakers. "You're drunk," I laughed, trying to ignore how good his hand felt on my arm. "So?" He pulled me closer, swaying to the music. "Come on, live a little." Maybe it was the couple of beers I'd had myself. Or maybe I was just tired of fighting my feelings. But I let him pull me into the crowd of dancing teenagers. We moved together, laughing and probably looking ridiculous, but I didn't care. Will's hands were on my hips, and the rest of the world seemed to fade away. As the song ended, our eyes met. Will's smile faded slightly, replaced by something more intense. For a moment, I thought he was going to kiss me, right there, in front of everyone. But then Sarah appeared, wrapping her arms around Will's waist from behind. "Will, I've been looking for you everywhere." The spell was broken. I stepped back, mumbling something about getting another drink, and fled to the kitchen. I stayed there for a while, trying to get my breathing under control. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "Alex." It was Will. I turned to find him standing in the doorway, looking more sober than he had earlier. "You okay? You disappeared." "Yeah. Just needed some air," I said, forcing a smile. "It's pretty crowded in there." He stepped closer, and I had to resist the urge to back away. "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Run away from me." His voice was soft, but his words hit me like a physical blow. "You've been doing it for months now. Every time we get close, you pull away." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I don't." "Yes, you do." He took another step forward. This time, I did back up, my lower back hitting the kitchen counter. "Why, Alex?" Maybe it was the alcohol giving me courage. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending. "Because I can't do this anymore, Will. I can't pretend that I don't." I couldn't finish the sentence. But Will moved closer still, until we were barely inches apart. "That you don't what?" "That I don't have feelings for you," I whispered, closing my eyes because I couldn't bear to see his reaction. "That I haven't been in love with you for months now. That watching you with Sarah doesn't kill me inside." The silence that followed felt eternal. Then I felt his hand on my cheek, gentle but insistent, urging me to open my eyes. "Sarah asked me to prom," he said softly. "And I told her no." My brain struggled to process his words. "What? Why?" "Because I'm in love with my best friend," he said simply. And then he was kissing me. That first kiss, in Jake's kitchen, was both an ending and a beginning. It ended months of uncertainty and hidden feelings. But it began something far more complex. Will's arm tightened around my waist, pulling me closer. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but quickly deepened as years of repressed feelings came rushing to the surface. We broke apart at the sound of voices approaching the kitchen. Will grabbed my hand and pulled me through the back door into Jake's yard. The April night was cool, but I barely noticed, still dazed from the kiss. How long? I managed to ask as we walked away from the house. Will's hand was still in mine. I don't know exactly. It happened so gradually, he said. But I started to realize it last summer, during that camping trip with our families. Remember that night we stayed up talking by the lake? I nodded. It had been a perfect night, clear skies full of stars, the sound of water lapping at the shore, just the two of us, sharing secrets and dreams. You were talking about your plans for the future, Will continued. And all I could think about was how I wanted to be part of that future. How I couldn't imagine my life without you in it. That's when I knew. By then, we had reached his car. Instead of getting in, Will leaned against the hood, pulling me close again. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you? I countered. He laughed softly. Fair point. I was scared of losing you, scared of what it meant about me, scared of what people would say. And now? He brushed his thumb across my cheek. Now I'm more scared of not being with you. This time, when we kissed, there was no hesitation. My hands found their way into his hair as his arms wrapped around me, holding me like he'd never let go. We only separated when we needed air. Even then, we stayed close, our foreheads touching. Come home with me, Will whispered. My parents are still out of town. The drive to his house was charged with anticipation. We held hands over the center console, stealing glances at each other at red lights. Neither of us spoke much, there was too much to say, and we had all night to say it. Once inside his house, nervousness crept in. This was Will's room, where we'd spent countless hours playing video games, doing homework, just hanging out. But now, everything felt different. Will must have sensed my anxiety because he pulled me into a gentle embrace. We don't have to do anything, he murmured against my hair. We can just talk, or watch a movie, or... I silenced him with a kiss. I want to be with you, I said softly. I've wanted to be with you for so long. That night was a discovery, of each other, and of something we'd only dared to imagine before. Every touch, every kiss felt both familiar and entirely new. We took our time exploring, learning what made each other gasp and tremble. When we finally came together, it was with whispered declarations of love and quiet promises for the future. Afterward, I lay in Will's arms, watching the moonlight play across his sleeping face. I felt complete in a way I never had before. But even in that perfect moment, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered the question we hadn't answered yet: how long could we keep this hidden? The next few weeks were like living in a dream. We kept our relationship a secret, but being with Will in private made all the pretending worth it. In public, we did all the things we used to, studying together, hanging out after swim practice, weekend movie marathons, but now there were stolen kisses, shared looks, and nights tangled up in each other's arms. Our families didn't suspect anything, at first. After all, we'd been having sleepovers for years. But Will's mother, Claire, was more perceptive than we'd given her credit for. She caught us one evening in late April. We were in Will's room, supposedly studying for finals. I was sitting at his desk while he lay on the bed, but we kept getting distracted by each other. Will had just pulled me onto the bed for a kiss when the bedroom door opened. Will, honey, do you boys want some? Claire's voice trailed off as she took in the scene before her. We sprang apart, but it was too late. The look on her face said she'd seen everything. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Claire quietly closed the door behind her. Mom, wait, Will called out, jumping up to follow her. I sat frozen on his bed, my heart pounding. This was it. Everything was about to fall apart. I could hear muffled voices from downstairs, Will and his mother talking. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Will came back upstairs. She wants to talk to both of us, he said softly, holding out his hand to me. Claire was waiting in the kitchen, 3 mugs of tea on the table. Her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly as she gestured for us to sit. How long has this been going on? She asked quietly. Will reached for my hand under the table. Since Jake's party, officially. But we've had feelings for each other for a while, I finished quietly. Claire nodded slowly. And you're sure about this? Both of you? Mom, Will's voice was steady, I love him. I have for a long time. I love Will too, Mrs. Parker, I added, my voice barely above a whisper. More than anything. She was silent for a long moment, looking between us. Then, to my surprise, she smiled softly. I always wondered if there might be something more between you two. The way you look at each other, it reminds me of how Will's father used to look at me when we were young. Relief flooded through me. But her smile faded as she continued, her expression turning serious. But boys, you need to be careful. This town, she sighed, not everyone will understand. And Alex, your parents. She didn't need to say more. My parents were conservative Christians who openly disapproved of anything outside their definition of normal. The thought of them finding out terrified me. We're being careful, Will assured her. We're not planning to tell anyone yet. Well, Claire said, reaching across the table to squeeze both our hands, you can always be yourselves here. This is a safe space. But please, be cautious elsewhere. She turned to Will, narrowing her eyes. And you, door stays open when Alex is over. We both blushed but nodded obediently. As we headed back upstairs, leaving the door open as instructed, I felt lighter. We had at least one ally in our corner. That night, as Will drove me home, we talked about the future. College applications were due soon, and suddenly, the idea of applying to West Coast schools felt ridiculous. I still think we should both apply to MIT, Will said, squeezing my hand. We could get an apartment together after freshman year. The next few months were a delicate balance, keeping our secret while planning our future. We both applied to MIT along with a few backups, trying not to get our hopes too high. The idea of going to college together, building a life together, seemed almost too good to be true. May brought prom season, and with it, new challenges. Everyone expected us to bring dates. Will and I considered going together, but we weren't ready for that kind of attention yet. Instead, we made a plan to go with friends. I asked my friend Emma, she knew I was gay, though not about Will. Will went with his lab partner, Rachel. On the night of prom, we all met at Will's house for photos. Claire helped coordinate everything, making sure Will and I got plenty of pictures together, under the guise of being best friends. She even managed to capture one of just the two of us, standing close, our hands barely touching behind our backs. A secret moment, captured forever. At the prom itself, we danced with our dates, stole glances across the room, and maintained our careful distance. But later that night, after dropping off the girls, we drove to our usual spot, a secluded overlook above the town where we'd spent countless nights talking. Will had brought a small Bluetooth speaker. As the stars twinkled above us, he pulled me into his arms. "May I have this dance?" he asked softly, starting a slow song on his phone. There, under the vast night sky, we finally got our real prom dance. Will held me close as we swayed, my head resting on his shoulder. It wasn't the traditional prom night most couples had, but it was perfect for us. "I got my MIT acceptance letter today," Will whispered into my hair. I pulled back, heart racing. "What? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" He smiled, that brilliant smile I loved so much. I wanted to wait for this moment. "Did you check your phone?" I asked, grinning. He pulled it out and saw the email I'd forwarded hours ago, my own MIT acceptance letter. His eyes lit up as he read it. Then he lifted me off my feet, spinning me around as we both laughed. "We did it," he exclaimed. "We're going together." The celebration that followed was a blur of kisses and whispered promises about our future. We stayed at the Overlook until dawn, planning our life in Boston, talking about the apartment we'd get after freshman year, the life we'd build together. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 2 weeks before graduation, my mother used my laptop to print something for church. That's when she found the emails, messages to MIT that mentioned Will and me, our housing plans, and more. I came home from swim practice to find both my parents waiting in the living room. My laptop was open on the coffee table. One look at their faces told me everything had changed. "Sit down, Alexander," my father said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. My mother was crying silently, clutching her cross necklace. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered. "To God?" That conversation was the hardest I'd ever faced. They alternated between anger, disappointment, and desperate attempts to reason with me. My parents insisted it was just a phase. That I was confused. That Will had somehow led me astray. "We're sending you to Pastor Michael's conversion therapy program," my father announced. "And you'll be attending Liberty University in the fall. I've already called them to defer your MIT acceptance." "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "I'm 18. You can't make those decisions for me anymore." What followed was a blur of shouting and tears. My father threatened to cut off all financial support. My mother begged me to choose God over sin. When I refused to renounce my relationship with Will or give up MIT, my father gave me an ultimatum: conform to their wishes, or leave. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and called Will. He answered on the first ring. "Can you come get me?" My voice broke. "Please." 20 minutes later, his car pulled up outside. I had hastily packed a bag with essentials, clothes, my laptop, important documents. As I walked out the door, my mother's sobs followed me. But my father didn't even look at me. Will was waiting beside his car, and the moment he saw my face, he knew. He pulled me into his arms right there in the street, not caring who might see. I broke down then, all the emotions I'd been holding back flooding out. Claire was waiting when we got to Will's house. One look at us and she immediately went into full mom mode, making tea and calmly calling the guest room your room, like it had always been decided I'd stay there. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Will snuck into my room. He held me as I cried, stroking my hair and whispering that everything would be okay. We fell asleep like that. And for once, Claire didn't say anything about closed doors the next morning. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Claire helped me set up a separate bank account and apply for financial aid. Will's father, David, who traveled often for work but was fully supportive when Claire told him about us, helped me navigate the legal process of declaring myself independent for college purposes. My parents made several attempts to contact me, mostly my mother, begging me to come home and repent. Each message hurt, but with Will and his family's support, I stayed strong. Word got out about us, as it inevitably would in a small town. Some friends stopped talking to us. Others surprised us with their support. The swim team, led by our captain Jake, yes, the same Jake from the party, made it clear that anyone who had a problem with us would have a problem with the whole team. Graduation was tense. My parents came but sat far from Will's family. They didn't stay for photos. But Claire made sure to take enough pictures for both families. When she hugged me after the ceremony, she whispered, "I'm so proud of both my boys." That summer was both wonderful and challenging. Will and I no longer had to hide our relationship. But dealing with the town's reactions, the whispers, the stares, the occasional cruel comment, was difficult. We found refuge at the Overlook. At the lake where we'd first realized our feelings. And always, in the safety of Will's home. August came faster than we expected. The day we left for MIT, Claire insisted on driving us to the airport herself. The car was packed with our belongings, everything we could fit in suitcases and boxes. The rest would be shipped later. At the security checkpoint, Claire hugged us both tightly, tears in her eyes. "Take care of each other," she said. "And call me often." Will squeezed my hand as we watched her walk away. "Ready?" he asked softly. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I was. But with Will beside me, I felt like I could face anything. Boston was different from our small town in every possible way. The city buzzed with energy and diversity. On our first walk through campus, we saw several same-sex couples holding hands openly. Nobody stared. Nobody whispered. Will and I looked at each other, and slowly, tentatively, we linked our fingers together. Freshman year was challenging. We were in different dorms, had demanding course loads, and had to navigate being in a relationship while making new friends and adjusting to college life. But we made it work. We studied together in the library, had dinner dates in the dining hall, and spent weekends exploring the city. Our favorite spot became the Charles River Esplanade. We'd sit there for hours, watching the boats and talking about everything and nothing. It reminded us a little of our Overlook back home, but here, we could be openly affectionate without fear. By the end of freshman year, we had a solid group of friends who accepted us completely. Emma, my prom date, had ended up at Boston University and became a regular part of our circle. Will was thriving in his computer science program, while I discovered a passion for bioengineering. As planned, we got an apartment together for sophomore year, a tiny one-bedroom in Cambridge that cost too much. Our apartment may have been small and overpriced, but it felt like heaven, because it was ours. Claire helped us decorate over FaceTime, and Will's dad contributed some furniture. My parents, well, that was still complicated. My mom had started sending the occasional text, usually on holidays or my birthday. They were awkward, but they felt like small steps toward something. My father remained silent. But life went on. Will and I built our own kind of family, friends who became like siblings, professors who became mentors, and Claire and David, who supported us from afar. We had our struggles, like any couple. But we faced them together. During winter break of our sophomore year, we returned home for the first time since starting college. The town felt smaller somehow, but also less threatening. We were stronger now. More secure in ourselves, and in our love. One afternoon, while getting coffee at the local cafe, we ran into Sarah Matthews, Will's almost prom date. She was home from UCLA and greeted us warmly. "I always knew, you know," she said with a smile. "The way you two looked at each other in chemistry class, it was pretty obvious to anyone paying attention." That encounter made us realize just how much we'd grown. What once felt like insurmountable obstacles now seemed like distant memories. We were no longer scared teenagers hiding their feelings. We were young adults, building a real life together. Junior year brought new challenges and opportunities. Will landed a prestigious internship at a tech startup in Boston, while I began research work in a biotech lab. Our schedules became more demanding, but we made sure to protect our time together. Sunday mornings became sacred, just the two of us, coffee, and slow conversations under the blankets. It was during one of those mornings that Will brought up the future again. We were curled up in bed, sunlight creeping across the wall, casting a soft glow on his face. "Have you thought about after graduation?" he asked, fingers gently combing through my hair. "A little," I admitted. "My lab professor mentioned a PhD program. She thinks I'd be a good fit." "What about you?" I asked, looking up at him. "Any of those tech companies reach out?" Will hesitated. "Google did." My heart skipped a beat. "Oh? But it's in California," he added. I didn't know what to say. "I turned it down," he said quickly. "There are plenty of great opportunities here in Boston. And I want to be where you are." I sat up. "Will, you can't turn down Google because of me." "I'm not turning it down for you," he said, pulling me back into his arms. "I'm choosing us. Besides, Boston's tech scene is booming. I have other options." That conversation led to many more. We started talking about marriage. Not immediately, but someday. We dreamed about a house in the suburbs. I talked about adopting kids. What once were fantasies became real possibilities, things we could actually plan for. During spring break that year, we got unexpected news. My sister Rachel, now in college herself, called to tell me our mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Despite everything, my world tilted. "Do you want to go home?" Will asked. I nodded through tears. "Will you come with me?" "Of course." The drive back to our hometown felt different. Will held my hand over the center console, just like that first night after Jake's party. Only this time, we didn't let go when other cars passed by. At the hospital, my dad was there. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. When he saw us, he stiffened, but then gave a small nod in acknowledgement. My mom was asleep when we arrived. Rachel hugged us tightly. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered. When Mom woke up and saw me, she started crying. I moved to her bedside, and she grabbed my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." That hospital visit became a turning point in healing our family. Although my dad still struggled to accept everything, my mom's illness helped us all realize how fleeting life really is, and how love, more than anything else, is what matters. During her treatment, I visited home often. Will was always by my side. His presence gave me the strength I didn't know I had. Even my father began to see Will's care and quiet devotion. Eventually, my mother beat cancer. During her recovery, she and I had long, honest talks. She told me that seeing Will and me stand by each other through everything had helped her understand. Love shouldn't have boundaries. After college graduation, Will and I stayed in Boston. I pursued my PhD. Will joined a top tech company. We bought a small house in the suburbs, finally, a place to call our own. Claire visited often. Even my parents began stopping by, quietly at first, then more regularly. Looking back now, at that fateful night in Jake's kitchen, at all the moments of fear and hope, I realized something. We're both grateful. Grateful that we took the risk. That we found the courage to admit our truth. Life isn't always easy. But love, real love, makes it worth the fight. As Will often says, some stories are destined for a happy ending from the start. And ours? Ours is the best proof of that.